Males always want sex. That's what some people think of men who are victims of rape. And based on what? This thought is based on the common belief that a man has to be aroused to get erect, which means that he's willing to have sex. Well, this is not how things work. And let me tell you that male victims should have the right to be listened to. First of all, how can a man be raped? A man can be raped at any age, but the younger they are, the more vulnerable they become. Most of the time, the victim knows the perpetrator, which is often a friend or a family member. He can get penetrated or be forced to penetrate someone against his will. But how is it possible though? Because men have to be aroused to get erect, right? Well, not exactly. Because men can be physically stimulated without feeling aroused and thus causing an erection. Roy Levin and Willy van Berlo wrote in an article in the Journal of Clinical Forensic Medicine that slight genital stimulation or stress can create erections, even though no specific sexual stimulation is present. Considering this fact, an erection does not mean that the male consents to sex. Men make up about 10% of all sexual assault victims reported to the police in the United States. Despite this fact, male victims are often overlooked by society because by masculine gender socialization, it is unbelievable to think that a man can get raped. Can you believe it? Of male victims of sexual violence, only about 20% report their victimization to authorities. And the rest of them knows that they won't be taken seriously and will be ridiculed, called weak or gay, before being unable to defend themselves. They will be shamed and be considered unmanly all because they couldn't control the situation, especially if it has been orchestrated by a woman. Think about it. When you mention a woman in a situation of rape, you rarely imagine her in the shoes of the aggressor, as she is always the victim being abused by a man. Most of the time, this is the case. But I said most of the time, not all the time. Because a woman is capable of abusing a man or even another woman for malicious intents, much like men aggressors. Some of the victims tend to develop unhealthy coping strategies after getting raped, such as denying it even happened in the first place, while younger men will explain to themselves as, "I'm a stud, I got laid by..." This behavior reduces the chances of victims to seek the necessary help to recover mentally from the trauma. And since male victims tend to get more non-genital injuries than women, they are more likely to neglect seeking medical attention if the injuries are not significant. As grim as it seems, not all hope for justice is lost. Improvements have been made over the years. For example, the implementation of specialized training for law enforcement on male sexual assaults has increased the rate of sexual investigations, emphasizing the need for tailored approaches. However, this is not enough, because investigations can be made only if the crime is reported, and the victims have many reasons to be hesitant about sharing their experience. So we should also try to spread awareness. A Taiwanese movie called If I Had Known Boys Could Be Sexually Assaulted Too, produced in 2012, does it well, though it's been criticized for reinforcing the stereotype of a middle-aged man predator abducting and assaulting a child. Since we know that female men rapes exist, it would be wise to create an educational movie including this kind of scenario. Before leaving, I have to remind you all that this is not a suffering competition, because women have it statistically worse than men. But this does not mean that we should leave behind a minority of persons who face the same violence and only wish for the same empathy. Sexual assault is a crime, and nobody should have to live through this traumatic event and be labeled as survivors. This speech was a calling for justice and compassion to make the victim's voice heard. Thank you for listening.